Hallo ihr Lieben, ich freue mich, dass ihr heute bei Complexity in a Frame ein Interview sehen werdet, das ich mit David Brodsky, einem 1953 in Kiew geborenen Fotografen, der jetzt in Chicago lebt, führen konnte. Ein spannender Fotograf, tolle Fotos auch auf seiner Homepage und in seinem Buch, nähere Details gleich nach dem Intro. It's a great pleasure and honor for me to welcome today David Brodsky for an interview. He is now in Chicago, I'm here in Vienna, and I think we will have a lot of fun with a very interesting photographer. Hello. David, how did you actually get into photography? You actually had quite different ideas about your artistic future from an early age on.
Yes, I love to paint and draw since my childhood, as long as I remember myself. I was taking art classes and later continued to learn the fundamentals of painting with very good and famous artists back in Kiev, like Brodsky and Boris Rapoport and Mikhail and Anatoly Turovsky's brothers. So and of course later on I learned a lot of stuff in college. How that all started in fifth grade, I remember, on a very small screen in a theater in Kiev, they start to show French documentaries about Impressionists. I knew from the books about the Impressionists, but it was kind of like part of the history. It didn't touch me that much. But those videos, the documentaries actually were so emotional on the big screen with the color, and I felt completely overwhelmed by a symphony of those colors, emotions, and the most it's a history of the rebellion in spirit of in art. So it became my kind of like passion on my young years, which I still kind of like have till today, but it's a little different form. At the same time, I started to pay more attention to graphic design. I have to say that my father, Solomon Brodsky, was the prominent graphic designer back in Ukraine and Soviet Union. And he had a very strong influence of my development as an artist, not only as a graphic designer. I like to watch him working, and he was working at home. And I remember my childhood very early. I was waking up and seeing my dad working on his desk and listening the Austrian marches. And it's a part of my childhood. I can't just separate it because he was in love with Austria, where he ended his war as a soldiers in the Soviet Air Force. And he was there learning some stuff with Austrian architect. I forgot his name. He had mentioned this. So he loved it, and this music was part of his inspiration, probably. He liked the marches for some reason, and classical music too. So he taught me not only the craft of design, but the most important, the approach to the projects. the laconic style and ability to find a simple but sophisticated solution. It's influenced me a lot in graphic design, to some degree in my paintings, and later on I feel like it's influenced my photography as well. Because I don't like to produce something which requires a lot of explanations. The work should talk to the people, or not to talk, it depends who is looking at, and be understood by people right away without like written explanations. I graduated from the Kiev Industrial Art Design College in 1974 and started my professional journey in the field of graphic design. I was working as a graphic designer and multimedia designer, later of course, and creative director in Soviet Union, later in Italy and the United States. Of course, during this time, I could find less and less time for painting, especially considering beginning of a new life in America, where I and my family immigrated in 1990. But the passion for the art continued to burn in my heart. So as soon as I could afford to travel, I always had my small pocket Canon camera ready to take shots of everything exciting I could use later as a visual reference to my future paintings. Of course, I was well familiar with photography basics by working with the professional photographers for my graphic design projects and taking pictures, of course, of my family and friends. But I never, ever thought that photography will become my new way for self-expression. In 2009, me and my wife traveled to Israel. By that time, I started to pay more attention to people surrounding me on the streets. I didn't try to classify my photography as street photography or something else. I simply didn't care. And I still, honestly. I just wanted to candidly capture people's characters, their moods and expressions. I fell in love with this process. It was the beginning of my new journey. I was able to rediscover photography again in my life. Although I've come to find my different true medium later in life, I see my long-held artistic desires have finally met my experiences. So this is how that all began.
Before you kindly send me your book, the exact informations about the book and how to get it will be after this video. Before you sent me the book, I already admired your photographs and your work on your homepage. I was really, it was for me really striking to feel the incredible density of the atmosphere in your photographs. For me, the majority of the photos on your homepage, and of course here in this book, are the best examples for street photography. What is your photographic concept? What is your approach?
The photography for me is not a recording of surroundings. It is about discovering a character in a particular set which is somehow reflects my feelings, catches my attention on the street. I think the emotional content of the is an image an image most important element, regardless of photographic techniques. Because with the new technologies, it's a lot of different techniques and tricks, but to me, the emotions are the most important part of it. If you can't feel what you're looking at, then you never going to get others to feel anything when they look at your picture. I was watching people on some of my exhibits, looking at my photographs, just trying to analyze their expression and the way they're looking at it. And I can proudly to say I've seen people emotions when they were looking on my some of my photographs, and it was the best reward for what I'm doing. A lot of inspiration comes from my travels. I feel like everything is connected. Human emotions are universal, regardless of geography and culture. Like pain is pain, regardless you live in Austria, Russia, America, or Africa. It's the same emotional and physical reaction on the environment. One of my favorite writers, it's a Russian writer, Anton Chekhov. In my photography, I'm trying to achieve an atmosphere of Chekhov's short stories, which I love tremendously. It's not too much happen in those stories. They're dealing with the simple, everyday things, small slice of life. But there is something magical about how perfectly described they are, emitting humanity and tolerance and compassion. I'm trying to achieve the same kind of emotional and atmospheric feelings people can feel looking at my photographs. And I found that images to be strongest when this subject seemed unaware of you, of your presence, caught in their moments of thoughts before they know that the best angles are. It's a lot of discussion about should you ask permission on the street of people or not, but as soon as you establish the contact with person, even if it's a very friendly contact, you're losing that frozen in the moment truth I'm trying to catch when people, like I said, don't pause, because some people getting angry, some people start to make them look smarter or cheesy or whatever way. This is not what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
So coming back to the Chekhov's idea, I'm trying to unveil stories, not at first obvious, but filled with enough emotions or mystery to elevate them above the ordinary. This is part of why I named my book like that. People ask me sometimes how I thank you, how I compose, how I approach technically to taking pictures on the street. I don't have a luxury to analyze momentary situation. It is more intuitive strike which makes me aim and shot. When something happens, you have to be extremely swift. You have to expect unexpected any moment, because if you lose it, if you try to get closer or find better angle, it's just gone. People don't pause. This is the idea. So I'm taking much more picture than I show, because of course, not all of them are the way I want it to be, but I have to find this moment. Kind of similar approach I have when I shoot in urban architecture. open landscape, animals, or old toys with a character, you can find a few photographs on my website, which I've taken picture of the old toys. They look very, like my sons told me, why you taking a picture of those spooky subjects. I don't know. They kind of, I don't want to be crazy, but they kind of talk to me. I show the example. This is my latest doll I found in the Salvation Army store, which has a lot of emotions in it.
It's great, huh?
I bought it for like $1, but it's on my, I have here, unfortunately I can show you my shelf with my toys, but it has so much character in it. It's not just like standard Barbie.
I understand it really very, very well, yeah?
Yeah. So when I look at the camera, through the camera, through the lens, I sense another kind of reality beyond what I see. My aim is not to record something, is to reveal something else. So this is the kind of my concept of what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm. You make incredible expressive black and white photos. On the other hand, there are also color photos in your portfolio, and I think, in my humble opinion, they are perfect. In the contrasts, in the interplay, in the exchange of colors. What do you prefer? Do you prefer to take photographs in black and white or in color, or?
Honestly, I can give you an answer on this eternal dilemma of using color or black and white in art photography. Better than very talented German photographer Andreas Brandau, if I pronounce it correctly. I just have to read it because this is really answers your question. This is, and I 100% agree with him. He wrote, there is a good reason for black and white in street photography. While being focused on decisive moment, the essential elements of a picture have to come together in a single moment. Black and white is all about light and shadow, shape and composition. You can say this is photography reduced to essential. Color could often disturb or distract such a moment. On the other hand, color can emphasize the composition, give a certain mood, breathe life into the picture. I'm torn between the two worlds. Why I'm shooting always in a raw mode to have all options. If a color isn't main subject or doesn't add something to the story, I convert the picture into black and white. This is exactly my approach. Because, like I said, when you swiftly take a picture, it's impossible to analyze that going to be black and white on color. I'm just looking on expressions and situation. And after that, it's a lot of factors. Like he said, if the color is secondary, not completely necessary in a way to achieve what I want to achieve, I'm converted to black and white. But even in that approach, it has a lot of underwater cliffs. Like, for example, sometimes when you convert it, it's not enough contrast for black and white because the background is kind of active. And it's becoming very too soft. It's losing the moment. When I leave it in color, it works much better. The problem is every time when I do the exhibits, and especially in the books, I'm fighting with myself how to show to people what my art is to make it look more consistent, it's extremely difficult. But when you put black and white photographs together with the color, it creates some kind like visual, I wouldn't say mess, but something which I really don't like. It's why on my website I put a separate color, black and white most of the time, so people can switch back and forth, but not to have them like next to each other. So this is my idea, and it's always every picture I'm working on, it's always a dilemma, and I'm trying to find the best solution to express what I wanted to express.
I want to make a step back in your biography because you have something in common with another great photographer. Before turning to photography, Henri Cartier-Bresson studied painting in Paris with André Lhote, and he learned a lot, he said later on, by learning to paint in a real artistic environment, in the way of seeing.
The first of all, thank you very much. You're kind of flattering me to compare to this Mr. Cartier-Bresson. And I have to tell you, yesterday I was browsing internet, and all of a sudden I found very interesting moment. Today is 113th birthday of Henri Cartier-Bresson, and somebody made it the street photography day. So it's kind of like holiday today for us. I don't know how official it is, but it's just interesting coincidence. Speaking of fine art, of course, I've seen a lot of great photographers which didn't have any art background. So it's not like it must be. But I think a fine art training was very beneficial for me as a photographer. It helped my ability to interpret a scene, to compose, to find the relations among the objects in my photographs, even if I was working on this in the post-production. Henri Cartier-Bresson is one of the photographers I admire and respect immensely for understanding the geometry of a scene and skill to design an image and blend everything together to create striking work of art. It was not only his talent, but also, I think, the fact that he looked at photography in a different way, from prism of artistic knowledge. You train your eye and trying to see what's not very obvious for most of the people. And to me, it's really, really helpful. And of course, the composition of the picture. Speaking of him, I love very much his quote. Probably has, to some degrees, some feelings I can share with him. He said, "We are not what you call misfit painters. Photography is a way of expressing ourselves with another tool. That's all." It's very true, and somehow reduces my guilt about not completely fulfilling my youth dreams to become a fine art painter, because I still have this guilt. So I have to confess. It's why I start to paint again very slowly, and it's not the easy process to come back after so many years to the stuff I thought was going to be my future. So I have much more much more responsibility to myself to make it good, and this is kind of like slow down me. So, but it's another subject.
There's one important line in this interview, that's your approach to photography as a way to express emotions, to awake also empathy and emotions in those who are looking, who are watching your photographs. Some street photographers, but also other photographers, have a very sharp eye on the people around them. Sometimes they all must show a certain malice, or, for instance, Martin Barr, whom I find a very important photographer, contemporary photographer. He has almost a certain cruel view at people, at their peculiarities. Your photos have, in my opinion, a completely different charisma.
It's a very important subject in the street photography, and I've read and I talked to different photographers about this, and everybody has a little different view on this. I can tell you about my personal take on it. Like I would never stick my camera in somebody's face, especially using the flash. On the end, it's very expressive shot with people kind of like taken off guard, scared, and with a very bright light in their face with the shadows. So formally, it's an impressive piece of imagery, but it absolutely doesn't express anything about this person. It's just effect for the photographer's ego. And unfortunately, some people like it, but it's their own business. Photographs I usually take can be ironic, with some humor, poetic, and thought-provoking. But I never judge or make fun of the someone in a cruel way. Always keep in mind the importance of respect and dignity in my subjects. They're foundation of a good images with emotional resonance, not just very accidental expressions on the face or something like that. So I'm trying to be respectful to the people I'm taking picture of, trying to find some timeless moments in people's expression, which would be probably the same 500 years ago or 500 years after. They're just timeless. This is my idea. I don't know how well I'm doing this, but this is what I'm trying to achieve.
When looking at your book, I have to show it again, yeah, because I hope that many people will order it from David. You really feel this respect for the people you portray. You, I often would have had the interest of talking to these people and to ask them, what were you discussing about in this situation, or what did you see in this or that situation? That's great, yeah, because there are situations which have very strong emotions, where you couldn't say the people whom you photograph, are they are they sad? Are they are they quarreling, or are they discussing substantial questions of their life? And the most important thing, these photographs are full of respect, and I like them very, very much. But now, maybe the last question. You've had several We've had a lot of exhibitions in the United States, but as far as I know, not yet in Europe. Uh, would you like, would it be interesting for you to show your pictures in Europe, maybe even in Vienna?
Of course, and I can tell you I'm really missing the European street life atmosphere surrounded by historical ambience. And unfortunately, because the pandemic, I can travel right now, and I feel like I really missing this. It is always inspired. I had numerous of collective and personal exhibition in the United States, but I would be absolutely delighted to share my work with European audience, especially in beautiful Vienna. By the way, it was the first Western city I discovered. I'd stepped in for myself 30 years ago when we just left Soviet Union. So unfortunately, we didn't spend too much time there, but I would love to come back in Vienna and, of course, in other European cities. I would be delighted.
Maybe one more information for those who didn't visit yet the homepage of David. You will find there photographs from Portugal, from Italy, from Israel, of course, from Sicily, which is part of Italy, but a very special part of Italy. Also from Austria, from different countries, and they are extraordinary. So, in any way, have a look at his homepage, and I hope that maybe some gallery owners or some people from museums of photography or people who are organizing exhibitions will view this interview, and maybe the one or the other will have got a certain push to invite David for an exhibition here in Europe, here in Vienna. So I have to thank you very much for this interview. It was a great pleasure for me. We had a lot of talks already via Jitsi, via Zoom, and it will not be the last contact we had. And it was really great to work with you for this interview, and I am really grateful for your time.
Likewise, thank you for having me. I really enjoy talking to you. Hopefully we'll continue this.
So, das war's. Es würde mich freuen, wenn wir tatsächlich David Brodsky und seine Bilder demnächst einmal in Wien sehen könnten. Wer es jetzt nicht mehr abwarten kann, der kann natürlich das Buch direkt bei David bestellen. Die Kontaktdaten folgen vor dem Abspann. Darüber hinaus wird es in dieser Reihe Begegnungen mit Fotografinnen und Fotografen weitere Interviews geben. Stay tuned, es würde mich freuen, wenn ihr den Kanal abonniert. Gebt den Daumen hoch, wenn es euch gefallen hat, und schaut regelmäßig vorbei. Und vergesst eines nicht, das schlechteste Foto ist immer das, das man nicht gemacht hat.